when a pen strike against paper can doom 20,000 people to death, and when brothers turn assassin against their own blood in the name of justice, you're witnessing more than tragedy. You're witnessing the moment a nation's soul splinters beyond repair. This is the story of the Cherokee removal, the Treaty of New Echota, and the assassination plot that turned rivers red and left a people fractured for generations. To understand the betrayal, you first have to understand what was being betrayed. By 1820, the Cherokee Nation was not what most Americans imagined when they thought of native tribes. This wasn't a nomadic people following buffalo herds. This was a sovereign nation with a written constitution, a bilingual newspaper, a court system, and a capital city. Sequoyah had given his people a written language just 4 years earlier. Within months, literacy rates exploded. The Cherokee Phoenix published legal documents, editorials, poetry, and international news in both Cherokee and English. Missionaries had established schools throughout Cherokee territory. Some Cherokee families owned plantations, slaves, and operated successful businesses. New Echota, the capital, had council houses, a printing press, and hosted diplomatic delegations from Washington. The Cherokee had done everything white America claimed to want from them. They had civilized themselves according to European standards. Chief John Ross embodied this transformation. Educated, Presbyterian, fluent in English, he wore tailored suits and could quote Shakespeare. He was also only 1/8 Cherokee by blood. But he was Cherokee by choice, by culture, by absolute commitment. And he believed with every fiber of his being that if his people played by America's rules, America would respect their sovereignty. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Because 800 miles to the southeast, in Georgia's Appalachian foothills, white prospectors had found something that would make Cherokee sovereignty completely irrelevant: gold. July 1829, Dahlonega, Georgia. Benjamin Parks kicks over a rock while deer hunting and sees it, a glint of gold in the creek bed. Within weeks, thousands of prospectors flood Cherokee territory. Within months, the Georgia Gold Rush becomes the first major gold rush in American history. And the Cherokee own the land it's happening on. Georgia's response is swift and brutal. The state legislature passes a series of laws that essentially make it illegal to be Cherokee in Georgia. Cherokee testimony becomes inadmissible in court. Cherokee council meetings become illegal. Mining on Cherokee land without permission becomes completely legal, as long as you're white. The message is clear. We want your land, and we're taking it. The only question is whether you walk away or get buried under it. President Andrew Jackson, who had fought alongside Cherokee warriors during the Creek War, who had been saved by Cherokee allies at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, makes his position clear. The Cherokee have to go. Not just in Georgia. Everywhere east of the Mississippi. The Indian Removal Act passes Congress in 1830 by a margin of 5 votes. John Ross watches this legislative catastrophe unfold and makes a calculated decision. He'll fight this in court. The Cherokee Nation had treaties, binding legal agreements with the United States government. The Constitution's Supremacy Clause made those treaties the supreme law of the land. Surely, Ross thinks, surely the Supreme Court will uphold the law. And in 1832, in Worcester versus Georgia, the Supreme Court does exactly that. Chief Justice John Marshall rules that Georgia's laws are unconstitutional, that the Cherokee Nation is sovereign, that the state has no authority over Cherokee territory. It's a complete legal victory. And it means absolutely nothing, because President Andrew Jackson, according to legend, though the quote may be apocryphal, responds, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." The executive branch simply refuses to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling. Georgia ignores it. White settlers pour into Cherokee land with the full knowledge that no one is coming to stop them. And John Ross realizes that law, justice, and treaties only matter if someone with power cares enough to enforce them. July 1829, Dahlonega, Georgia, Cherokee territory. Benjamin Parks is deer hunting in the woods when he stops to drink from a creek. He's thirsty, hot, frustrated that he hasn't spotted any game yet. He kneels down, cups water in his hands, drinks. And then he sees it, a glint in the creek bed, a colour that doesn't belong. Yellow. Parks reaches into the water and pulls out a rock, turns it over in his hand, rubs off the dirt. Gold. He looks upstream, downstream, starts turning over more rocks. Gold. 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 Benjamin Parks has just discovered the first significant gold deposit in the United States, and it's on Cherokee land. Within days, word spreads. Within weeks, thousands of prospectors flood into Cherokee territory. White men with pans and picks and guns, setting up camps on Cherokee farms, digging holes in Cherokee fields, following veins of gold through Cherokee property without permission, compensation, or consequence. The Georgia Gold Rush becomes the first major gold rush in American history, predating California by nearly 20 years. At its peak, estimates suggest 15,000 miners are working Cherokee gold deposits. Boomtowns spring up overnight. Auraria, Georgia, Gold Town, grows from nothing to 1,000 residents in months, and every single one of them is trespassing on Cherokee land. Cherokee farmers return from market to find their fields dug up. Cherokee families wake to find miners panning in their creeks. Cherokee property owners try to expel trespassers and get threatened with violence. The Cherokee legal system arrests white trespassers for illegal mining. Georgia simply refuses to recognize Cherokee legal authority and orders the prisoners released. The Cherokee appeal to federal authorities. Surely the federal government will enforce Cherokee treaty rights. Surely the law matters. But Georgia sees an opportunity, not a crisis. The state legislature meets in Milledgeville and begins passing a series of laws that essentially make it illegal to be Cherokee in Georgia. Let me walk through these laws, because their brazenness is staggering. In December 1828, even before the gold discovery, Georgia passes a law declaring that all Cherokee lands within Georgia borders will become Georgia property as of June 1830, and that all Cherokee laws will become null and void. The state doesn't have authority to do this. Cherokee territory is protected by federal treaties, but Georgia does it anyway. After the gold discovery, Georgia accelerates its legal assault. In December 1829, Georgia passes laws that make Cherokee testimony inadmissible in court when a white person is a party. Cherokee literally cannot testify against white criminals. Prohibit Cherokee from mining gold on their own land. Only white people can legally extract gold from Cherokee territory. Make Cherokee council meetings illegal. The Cherokee government cannot legally convene. Divide Cherokee territory into counties under Georgia jurisdiction, allowing Georgia to tax Cherokee property and evict Cherokee who don't pay. Think about the logic here. Georgia makes it illegal for Cherokee to testify in court, then makes it illegal for Cherokee to mine gold on their own land, then makes it illegal for the Cherokee government to meet and coordinate a response. It's legal ethnic cleansing, designed to make Cherokee life so impossible that they'll leave voluntarily. The message is clear. We want your land, we're taking it, and the law won't protect you because we're rewriting the law to make victimizing you legal. Cherokee families watch white miners tear up their farms. Cherokee merchants watch white competitors steal their customers. Cherokee leaders watch their nation dismantled by legislative fiat. John Ross responds the way he's always responded, with law, diplomacy, and faith in American justice. He compiles documentation of Georgia's legal violations. He lobbies Congress. He writes editorials in the Cherokee Phoenix explaining why Georgia's laws violate federal treaties and the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. And he waits for the federal government to intervene and enforce Cherokee treaty rights. He's waiting for someone who has no intention of helping. To understand why the federal government won't help the Cherokee, you need to understand Andrew Jackson. Born in 1767 in the Carolinas, Jackson was a product of the frontier. Rough, violent, fiercely ambitious, and utterly convinced that American expansion was not just inevitable, but righteous. He'd made his reputation as an Indian fighter during the Creek War of 1813 to 1814, where he'd commanded a force that included Cherokee warriors. Yes, Cherokee warriors. This historical irony is crucial. In 1814, Cherokee soldiers fought alongside Jackson's forces at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, where they helped defeat the Red Stick Creeks. Cherokee warriors saved Jackson's life during the campaign. Jackson himself acknowledged the Cherokee contribution and praised their valor. Fast forward 15 years, Jackson is president, and the Cherokee who saved his life are now obstacles to be removed. What changed? Nothing about Jackson's character. Everything about his priorities. As a general, Jackson needed Cherokee military support. As president, Jackson needs Cherokee land. Or more specifically, he needs to satisfy Southern voters who want Cherokee land. Jackson's philosophy on Native Americans is straightforward and brutal. They are inferior. They cannot coexist with white civilization. And the kindest thing America can do is move them west of the Mississippi River, where they can maintain their traditional ways without interfering with American expansion. It's paternalistic genocide. Jackson genuinely seems to believe he's saving native peoples by forcing them into exile. He compares Indian removal to the migration of European peoples throughout history, ignoring that those migrations were usually voluntary or driven by external threats, not government-mandated ethnic cleansing. In his first State of the Union address in 1829, Jackson makes his position clear. The Cherokee and other southeastern tribes cannot remain east of the Mississippi. They must move west. The federal government will facilitate this move and provide land in Indian territory. But the move is not optional. Congress debates the Indian Removal Act throughout early 1830. The debate is fierce, passionate, and surprisingly close. Northern congressmen oppose removal, arguing it violates treaty obligations and moral principles. Theodore Frelinghuysen of New Jersey delivers a 6-hour speech against removal, arguing that Cherokee treaties are legally binding and that forcibly removing the Cherokee would be a national disgrace. Southern congressmen support removal, arguing that states have sovereignty over territory within their borders. The Cherokee cannot coexist with white civilization, and that removal serves Cherokee interests by protecting them from inevitable conflicts with white settlers. The House passes the Indian Removal Act by a vote of 102 to 97. 5 votes. That's the margin. The Senate passes it 28 to 19. Andrew Jackson signs it into law on May 28, 1830. The act doesn't explicitly mandate forced removal. It authorizes the president to negotiate removal treaties with tribes, offering land west of the Mississippi in exchange for land in the east. Technically, it's voluntary. In practice, it's a legal framework for ethnic cleansing. Because Jackson makes clear that tribes who refuse to negotiate removal treaties will receive no federal protection from state laws. Georgia's anti-Cherokee laws. The federal government won't intervene. White squatters on Cherokee land. The federal government won't evict them. State courts that refuse to recognize Cherokee legal rights. The federal government won't overrule them. The message is clear. Sign a removal treaty and get compensation, protection, and assistance. Or refuse and watch your nation destroyed by state governments while the federal government does nothing. John Ross watches this legislative catastrophe unfold and makes a calculated decision. He'll fight this in court. The Cherokee Nation has treaties, binding legal agreements with the United States government that predate the Constitution. The Constitution's Supremacy Clause makes those treaties the supreme law of the land, superior to state laws. Surely, Ross thinks, surely the Supreme Court will uphold the law. Surely Chief Justice John Marshall, who has consistently supported federal authority over state authority, will rule that Georgia's laws violate federal treaties and the Constitution. Ross hires some of the best lawyers in America. He meticulously documents Georgia's violations. He prepares a legal strategy designed to force the Supreme Court to rule on Cherokee sovereignty. And in 1831, he gets his chance. The legal battle unfolds in 2 acts, 2 Supreme Court cases that will define Cherokee sovereignty, or destroy it. Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, 1831. The Cherokee Nation files suit directly with the Supreme Court, invoking the court's original jurisdiction over cases involving states and foreign nations. The Cherokee argue they are a foreign nation under the Constitution, that Georgia's laws violate Cherokee sovereignty, and that the court should issue an injunction preventing Georgia from enforcing its anti-Cherokee laws. It's a bold strategy. If the court agrees that the Cherokee are a foreign nation, then Cherokee sovereignty is constitutionally protected. Georgia's laws become obviously unconstitutional. The Cherokee win. Chief Justice John Marshall writes the decision. And it's complicated. Marshall rules that the Supreme Court lacks jurisdiction to hear the case, because the Cherokee Nation is not a foreign nation in the constitutional sense. Instead, Marshall creates a new legal category: domestic dependent nations. The Cherokee, Marshall writes, are a distinct political society, separated from others, capable of managing its own affairs and governing itself, but they are not foreign nations. They are domestic dependent nations in a state of pupillage to the United States, similar to a ward to his guardian. It's a patronizing ruling, but not entirely hostile. Marshall acknowledges Cherokee sovereignty and self-governance. He just denies them standing to sue in federal court as a foreign nation. The case is dismissed on jurisdictional grounds, without ruling on the merits. John Ross is devastated but not defeated. The court didn't rule against Cherokee sovereignty. It just ruled on a technicality. Find a different legal path to the court, and maybe the outcome will be different. That path emerges from an unlikely source: missionaries. Worcester versus Georgia, 1832. Samuel Worcester is a Christian missionary living in Cherokee territory, operating a mission station with Cherokee permission. He's also writing articles for the Cherokee Phoenix, supporting Cherokee sovereignty and criticizing Georgia's removal efforts. Georgia passes a law requiring white people living in Cherokee territory to obtain a license from the state and swear an oath of loyalty to Georgia. Worcester and other missionaries refuse. They believe recognizing Georgia's authority over Cherokee land violates Cherokee sovereignty and their own consciences. Georgia arrests Worcester and other missionaries, tries them in state court, and sentences them to 4 years hard labor. Worcester appeals to the Supreme Court, arguing that Georgia has no authority to regulate activity on Cherokee land, because Cherokee sovereignty is protected by federal treaties that supersede state law. This time, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction. Worcester is a U.S. citizen appealing a state criminal conviction. The court can definitely hear that case. And this time, John Marshall delivers the ruling Ross has been waiting for. Marshall's decision in Worcester versus Georgia is a complete vindication of Cherokee sovereignty. Let me quote some key passages. The Cherokee Nation, then, is a distinct community occupying its own territory in which the laws of Georgia can have no force, and which the citizens of Georgia have no right to enter, but with the assent of the Cherokees themselves, or in conformity with treaties, and with the acts of Congress. The whole intercourse between the United States and this nation is, by our Constitution and laws, vested in the government of the United States. Marshall rules that Georgia's laws violating Cherokee sovereignty are unconstitutional. He orders Worcester released and Georgia's anti-Cherokee laws invalidated. It's a complete legal victory. The highest court in the United States has ruled that the Cherokee Nation is sovereign, that Georgia has no authority over Cherokee territory, that federal treaties protect Cherokee rights. John Ross receives the news and, for probably the first time in years, feels genuine hope. Law and justice have prevailed. The Supreme Court has spoken. Cherokee sovereignty is constitutionally protected. The celebration lasts about a week, because President Andrew Jackson, according to legend, though historians debate whether he actually said these exact words, responds to the Worcester decision with contempt. John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Whether Jackson literally said those words or not, his actions make his position clear. He's not going to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling. Georgia can ignore Worcester. The federal government will do nothing to stop them. And Georgia does exactly that. The state keeps Worcester in prison. Georgia continues enforcing its anti-Cherokee laws. White miners keep flooding onto Cherokee land. Georgia counties keep arresting Cherokee leaders. The Supreme Court has ruled, and the ruling means absolutely nothing, because no one will enforce it. This is the moment when John Ross's faith in American justice begins to crack. He has done everything right. He played by the rules. He hired the best lawyers, built the strongest legal case, won at the Supreme Court, and none of it matters, because law only matters if someone with power cares enough to enforce it. And the people with power Andrew Jackson, Congress, the US military have decided that Cherokee sovereignty, federal treaties, and Supreme Court rulings are all less important than satisfying Southern voters who want Cherokee land. Ross is about to learn that when law and politics collide, politics wins. And while he's processing this devastating reality, a fracture is opening within Cherokee leadership that will eventually tear the nation apart. Winter 1834. New Echota. In a council house meeting, a fault line opens in Cherokee leadership that will never fully heal. Major Ridge stands to speak. He's a full-blood Cherokee, a war hero, a man who killed other Cherokee at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend while fighting for the United States. He's respected, feared, and increasingly convinced of one terrible truth: the Cherokee cannot win this fight. I have signed my death warrant, he'll later say, about what he's about to do. His son, John Ridge, educated at Cornwall Foreign Mission School in Connecticut, married to a white woman, stands beside him. So does Elias Boudinot, the editor of the Cherokee Phoenix, who has seen firsthand how American public opinion has turned against his people. Their argument is pragmatic and brutal. Jackson won't enforce Worcester versus Georgia. Georgia won't stop its illegal land seizures. Congress won't intervene. Every day the Cherokee delay is a day they lose more leverage, more land, more people to violence and dispossession. If they negotiate removal now, they can secure good terms, money for the land, protection during relocation, land out west that they'll control forever. If they wait, Jackson will simply force them out with nothing. John Ross stands to respond. His argument is just as pragmatic, but rooted in a fundamentally different premise. The moment the Cherokee sign a removal treaty, they surrender every legal and moral claim to their homeland. They legitimize the theft. They make themselves complicit in their own destruction. Moreover, he argues, the Cherokee people have voted overwhelmingly against removal. In every council meeting, in every gathering, the answer is the same. We are not leaving. This is our home. The treaty party counters, the people are voting for a fantasy. They're voting for a world where law and justice matter. That world doesn't exist. The only choice is between negotiated removal and forced removal. Ross's party, the National Party, counters. If we surrender our homeland, we surrender our nation. There is no Cherokee nation without the land of our ancestors. The debate goes on for hours, days, years. And in Washington, Andrew Jackson watches this division and sees an opportunity. December 29th, 1835. New Echota, the Cherokee capital, the meeting that will destroy a nation, takes place in front of approximately 500 Cherokee people. That's out of a total population of 16,000. Major Ridge, John Ridge, Elias Boudinot, and a handful of other treaty party leaders sit across from federal negotiators. John Ross isn't there. He's in Washington, desperately lobbying Congress to reject any fraudulent treaty. The vast majority of Cherokee people aren't there either. Most don't even know this meeting is happening. The terms are presented. The Cherokee will give up all land east of the Mississippi River, about 7 million acres, in exchange for $5 million, land in Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma, and guaranteed protection from further removal. They have 2 years to relocate voluntarily before the US military will enforce removal. Fewer than 100 Cherokee sign the document. It doesn't matter. The US Senate ratifies the Treaty of New Echota by a single vote in May 1836. John Ross immediately launches a petition drive. Within months, He collects nearly 16,000 Cherokee signatures, virtually every adult Cherokee, declaring the treaty fraudulent and unauthorized. The Cherokee Constitution is explicit. Selling Cherokee land without the consent of the full council is treason punishable by death. The petition is delivered to Congress. Congress ignores it. Andrew Jackson declares the treaty valid and binding. And Major Ridge, watching the hatred and fury directed at him by his own people, tells his son, "I have just signed my death warrant." He's not being metaphoric. Cherokee law is clear. The punishment for unauthorized land cession is death. It's been the law for decades, designed specifically to prevent exactly this kind of betrayal. Major Ridge knows the law. He helped write it. But what choice did he have? Watch his people forced out with nothing? Or negotiate the best possible terms while some leverage remained? History will argue this question forever. But in 1838, as federal troops begin gathering on Cherokee land, the question becomes irrelevant. Because whether the treaty party was right or wrong, whether their betrayal was pragmatic or unforgivable, the result is the same. The Cherokee are being removed, and someone is going to pay. May 1838, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, U.S. Army General Winfield Scott arrives with 7,000 federal troops and orders to remove every Cherokee still east of the Mississippi. His instructions are clear. Get them out, by force if necessary, and force becomes very necessary. Soldiers sweep through Cherokee territory with rifles and bayonets. Families are pulled from their homes mid-meal, doors left open behind them, fires still burning in hearths. Cherokee farmers are arrested in their fields, their crops left to rot. Children are taken from schools, given minutes to say goodbye to their teachers. Stockade forts are built to hold thousands of Cherokee, while the logistics of mass deportation are organized. Conditions in these camps are horrific. Overcrowding, disease, inadequate food and water. People start dying before the march even begins. John Ross, who has spent years insisting that law and justice will prevail, watches his legal strategy collapse into irrelevance. The Supreme Court ruling doesn't matter. The fraudulent treaty doesn't matter. 16,000 petition signatures don't matter. Only one thing matters. The U.S. government wants Cherokee land, and they're taking it. But Ross manages to negotiate one final concession. Instead of military-managed removal, he convinces General Scott to let the Cherokee manage their own exodus. They'll organize, supply, and lead their own removal parties. It's a small mercy, but it means Cherokee leaders can keep families together, can move at a more humane pace, can bury their dead according to Cherokee tradition rather than leaving them in unmarked graves along military roads. The first detachments leave in June 1838. It's summer, hot, but not yet brutal. These groups fare better than what's coming, because the largest removals, carrying the majority of Cherokee people, don't begin until October. October in Tennessee, November in Arkansas, December in Missouri, winter, November 1838, southern Illinois. The Mississippi River crossing is delayed. The river is starting to freeze, making ferry crossings dangerous. Thousands of Cherokee camp on the western bank, waiting for conditions to improve. They don't improve. A cold snap hits. Temperatures plummet below zero. The camps, already low on supplies, become death traps. Pneumonia, dysentery, and whooping cough sweep through the huddled families. Elders and children die first, but healthy adults aren't far behind. The detachments keep moving because stopping means more deaths. But moving also means more deaths. There's no good option. People collapse on the trail and are left behind because the wagons are full of the sick and dying. Bodies are buried in shallow graves, marked with nothing but stones, if there's time. Often there isn't. The Cherokee call it unraveled, the trail where they cried. History calls it the Trail of Tears. By the time the last detachment arrives in Indian Territory, in March 1839, approximately 4,000 Cherokee are dead. 1 in 4 dead from exposure, disease, starvation, and heartbreak. John Ross's wife, Quartier, dies after giving her blanket to a sick child during a winter storm. Ross arrives in Indian Territory, a widower, his people decimated, his faith in American justice destroyed. And waiting for him in this new land are the people who signed the treaty. The treaty party, who arrived years earlier on their own terms, who have already established farms and homes, who look at the refugees staggering into Indian Territory and perhaps think, this is what we tried to spare you from. The resentment is immediate and mutual. The National Party sees the treaty party as traitors whose signatures enabled a genocide. The treaty party sees the National Party as stubborn idealists whose pride killed 4,000 people. Both sides know that Cherokee law demands blood payment for the land cession. And in the summer of 1839, that payment comes due. June 22nd, 1839. Indian Territory. 3 assassinations happen almost simultaneously, planned with military precision. At dawn, Major Ridge is riding home from a trip to Arkansas. His horse walks a familiar trail through thick woods. He's 69 years old, grey-haired, tired, probably thinking about breakfast. He doesn't see the ambush until it's too late. Gunshots explode from the tree line. 25 different weapons, witnesses later report. Major Ridge's body falls from his horse, hit multiple times. He's dead before he hits the ground. At roughly the same time, 100 miles away, John Ridge is at home with his family. His wife Sarah and their children are in the house when armed men burst through the door. They drag John Ridge from his bed, stab him repeatedly in front of his screaming family, then drag his body into the yard. Sarah Ridge runs outside to find her husband bleeding out on the grass. He reaches for her hand. She takes it, and he dies right there in front of his children, in front of his wife, at dawn on a summer morning in the land he'd secured for his people. Elias Boudinot is working at a mission station, helping build a new building, when 3 Cherokee men approach and ask him to gather medicine for a sick family member. Boudinot, ever the missionary, agrees immediately. He walks with them toward the mission doctor's quarters, and halfway there they attack him. Hatchets and knives, brutal and quick. Boudinot is dead within minutes, his body left on the path. 3 men, 3 assassinations. Same morning. The message is unmistakable. Cherokee law demanded death for unauthorized land cession. That law has been enforced. The killers are never officially identified, never prosecuted. John Ross publicly condemns the murders, calling them a violation of Cherokee law and order. But he also notes that the men who died had violated Cherokee law by signing an unauthorized treaty. It's a careful statement. Condemnation without commitment. Grief without justice. The treaty party explodes in fury. Stan Wattier, Elias Boudinot's brother, a signer of the Treaty of New Echota, who survived only because he was warned in time, swears vengeance. He organizes a paramilitary group dedicated to destroying the National Party leadership. Skirmishes break out. Ambushes. Murders and counter-murders. What had been a political division becomes a civil war. And this is where the betrayal really takes root. Because the Treaty of New Echota didn't just cost the Cherokee their homeland. It didn't just kill 4,000 people on a frozen trail. It fractured Cherokee society so completely that the fault line would persist for generations. Brother against brother. Family against family. Full bloods versus mixed bloods. Traditional versus assimilated. National party versus treaty party. The betrayal wasn't just signing the treaty. The betrayal was that it worked. The US government got exactly what it wanted. Not just Cherokee land, but a Cherokee people so divided, so wounded, so consumed by internal conflict that they could never again present a united front. 1861, 22 years after the assassinations. The United States fractures into civil war, North versus South, Union versus Confederacy, and the Cherokee Nation, still bleeding from its own internal conflicts, gets pulled into America's bloodiest war. Standwatie, Treaty Party leader, sides with the Confederacy. He becomes a Confederate general, the last Confederate general to surrender at the end of the war. John Ross, National Party leader, tries to keep the Cherokee neutral. When that becomes impossible, he reluctantly sides with the Union. And the Cherokee Nation fights itself once again. Watie's Cherokee Confederate forces fight against Cherokee Union forces. Cherokee homes are burned by other Cherokee. Cherokee families are murdered by Cherokee soldiers. The Civil War for the Cherokee isn't North versus South. It's 1839 all over again. Treaty Party versus National Party, old wounds ripped open, old hatreds burning fresh. By 1865, when the war ends, the Cherokee Nation has the highest per capita casualty rate of any combatant group in the entire Civil War. The territory is devastated. Homes destroyed, farms burned, infrastructure ruined. And the US government, claiming the Cherokee sided with the Confederacy, ignoring that significant Cherokee forces fought for the Union, forces the Cherokee to sign a new treaty surrendering even more land. The betrayal continues, generation after generation, treaty after treaty. Standwatie died in 1871, never fully reconciled with the National Party, never forgetting his brother's murder. John Ross died in 1866, while negotiating yet another treaty in Washington, still fighting for Cherokee sovereignty until his final breath. The Treaty Party and the National Party officially reconciled in 1846, but the bitterness persisted in families and communities for generations. Today, the Cherokee Nation is the largest federally recognized tribe in the United States, with more than 392,000 citizens. They've rebuilt their nation, their culture, their language. They've survived removal, civil war, allotment, termination policies, and cultural genocide. But the trail of tears remains the defining wound, not just for the deaths, though those matter enormously, but for what it revealed about betrayal, because Major Ridge was right. Waiting meant forced removal with no compensation. And John Ross was right. Signing the treaty legitimized the theft and fractured the nation. They were both right. And they were both wrong. The real betrayal wasn't the Treaty Party or the National Party. The real betrayal was a system that put an indigenous nation in a position where both survival and resistance meant destruction, where every choice led to death, quick death on the trail, or slow death through cultural extinction. The river ran red in 1839, not because Cherokee killed Cherokee, but because the United States designed a situation where that became inevitable. That's the legacy of the Trail of Tears. Not just the 4,000 who died, but the wound that never fully healed. The betrayal that came from within because the pressure came from without. And the knowledge that sometimes the cruelest betrayals are the ones where both sides were just trying to save their people. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shaped history. Drop a comment below. Do you think the treaty party was pragmatic or traitorous? Where's the line between survival and surrender? I'll see you in the next one.